Today we're talking about warding. But before you stop and be like, oh wait, this is just about wards, I know how wards work. This is actually super exciting even for me, because I'm not talking about warding on my own, I'm talking about warding with EmilZy. EmilZy is the support player for Obey Alliance, the currently highest performing EU team in the SPL. I myself learned a ton just from making this video with him, so I'm hoping you will learn even more from actually watching the video. I will do a quick, very basic introduction to wards and then pass the mic over to EmilZy to go all in depth on various specific situations, strategies and tips and tricks. Before we even get started, and because I feel like half of you are gonna forget about that otherwise, check out EmilZy's channel please, link is up top. He does great content of various sorts, talks about items, meta changes especially for supports, looks at SPL games in hindsight and talks about the decision making, all the planning and what could have been improved and so on, which is very interesting if you want to improve yourself. And he will also start releasing more variety content like a ranked support tier list and a comparison of different aura items and so on. So please go check him out and leave him a sub if you enjoy what you're seeing. With that said, let's jump into the video. First, a quick introduction to wards. What are wards? Wards are consumables that you place on the map in order to get vision of an area while not standing in that area. So basically, they reveal enemies passing through that area, can see if objectives are attacked or something like that. So they're pretty important for the game in order to not get ganked, or get ganked with vision at least, so you know who's coming, and to make sure that objectives don't get taken from you without you knowing about it. There are two types of wards in Smite and 3 ways to get wards. All of these wards have a range of 45 units and last for 3 minutes or until killed, and all of them reveal enemies. None of them reveals stealth enemies though. Normal wards cost 50 gold, Sentry Wards, which can reveal enemy wards, cost 120 gold, and Chalice of the Oracle costs 400 gold. No matter which of these items you use, you're always only able to place 2 wards on the map at the same time, no matter if it's sentries, normals, or wards from the Chalice. Essentially, wards from the Chalice of the Oracle are like normal wards. The only difference is you pay for the Chalice once, it takes up a slot forever or until you sell the item, and then you don't spend anything on the wards from it anymore. If you want to build Chalice, it's highly advised to build it very early into the game, where it's a lot more worth it than if you were to decide to get it at the 15-minute mark, for example. Due to time restrictions, we can't really go all in depth on a Chalice versus normal wards, so I will recommend checking out EmilZy's video on exactly that topic, where he explains what the difference is and when you should use which one or what the upsides and downsides can be. That's linked right here, and with that I pass the mic on to EmilZy, who will go more in depth about many of the specific topics and strategies. This video will be quite long. We will start with more traditional ways to ward and the very standard places to ward, and then go to more untraditional strategies or specific counters and additional info. Towards the end of the video we will also have EmilZy's golden rules for warding. So if you feel like you don't have time to watch the whole video, I could recommend skipping to certain points and seeing if relevant topics for you come up at that point, because we kind of try to keep it structured in a way that allows you to go from point to point.
Hi guys, it's EmilZy, and today we're gonna start off with talking about some of the most common wards in Smite. First of all, let's talk about the wards at the mid camps. You can see that we put down that some of the most common wards are the one at the mid camps, that is top left, top right and bottom right at the mid camps, at the both mid camps. The reason why these wards are so contested is because that's where you want the jungler to gank from, and that's also where the support usually rotates in. So it gives you a lot of vision and keeps you safe in the mid lane, which is probably the least safe lane. So besides the normal wards, you also want to use Sentry Wards at these spots. This is to eliminate the enemy mid laners, especially vision, so they are now vulnerable to the ganks. The 4 other wards that I put as the most common wards are the wards at the 2 purple buffs in duo lane. These wards make sure that you don't get ganked in the duo lane, and the same goes for the solo lane. Although these wards can be placed a bit different, I think these are the 2 most common wards at the 2 blue buffs for the solo laners. Now these were the most common wards. We also have something we're gonna call situational wards, which you're gonna see in most of your games, but not always. So starting off, let's take a look at the 2 Sentry Wards at the both purple buffs and both blue buffs. Now the reasoning why you want to place these stun wards are the same as for the mid lane. If you have these spots de-warded, the enemy ADC or soul laner is going to be vulnerable to ganks from your jungle or your support or your mid laner or whoever is going to come over. As you can see, we also put down 4 normal wards for each side of the map. Let's start off with the wards at the blue buff and the purple buff, which are a bit further up. As you can see, these wards are not gonna get catched by the normal Sentry Wards that people are gonna place, so therefore you're still gonna have vision if they take the pathing from red purple buff, or they take the pathing from speed blue into your lane, so you're still gonna avoid the gank. The other reason for these 4 wards are mainly that you want to see if the enemy jungler or the enemy ADC or support or mid laner is gonna do the purple or the blue buffs. Then you have eyes on where the enemy guards are, and if, let's say, the jungler is at the purple buff, maybe you guys can gank solo lane because the jungler is not gonna be there. The last 4 wards that we put in are the wards on both red buffs and both speed buffs. These are the same reasoning. You want to see where the enemy jungler is, or the mid laner, or the support, or whoever, so you have vision. Let's say that the enemy jungler is doing the red buff, but you have a ward on the speed buff as well, and you see the speed buff is up. You can probably go and invade the speed buff. What you see in a lot of competitive games right now is that teams get their leads from invading buffs. By having these wards on the buffs, you also get the timer of the buff. This means that you can plan out for next time you're gonna invade on these certain buffs. So therefore these wards are also really good. Now there is another thing that we're gonna call objective wards. These are also some of the most common wards in Smite, but I wanna mention them a bit for themselves. Objective wards are the wards that you place at the Gold Fury and or the Fire Giant. These are highly contested ward spots, probably the most contested spots besides the mid-camp wards early on. You want to have D-ward control so you can pull the Gold Fury without them knowing, or the Fire Giant. At the same time, you also want to have the ward vision so you make sure the enemy team can't do the Gold Fury or the Fire Giant for free, so they can't sneak the objective. There is some smart ways to avoid the D-wards and the Sentry Wards around the objectives, but we will get back to this later in the video. So now you're probably thinking, I'm a hunter, where do I ward? Do I have to ward the solo lane blue buff? No, you don't. So let's talk a bit about where the roles in Smite usually wards. The hunter or the ADC is usually gonna ward one of the purple buff to prevent ganks, and occasionally the hunter is also gonna provide D-wards in these spots, and sometimes the hunter has to D-ward the Gold Fury as well. Now on hunters you don't need to prioritize wards that high. It is however really important that you get at least 1 ward per back so you can refresh the wards in the jungle so you don't get ganked. But it's not necessary to get Sentry Wards all the time, because if you do that you're gonna set yourself really far back in your build. Let's go to support. The supports usually wards all over the map, although you do want to focus a bit on the dual lane side. If your ADC did not get that ward, you want to place it down to make sure he's safe. But besides that, especially Sentry Wards around the Gold Fury are going to be really important for you to keep up. Now as a support I have some rules that we will get back to later in this video, but mainly you want to grab at least 2 wards every back and make sure you place them down. Unlike other roles, it's not as important in the support role to get a lot of items. You'd rather make sure that your team has better ward vision. There is some certain scenarios though where you don't want to get wards. Let's say you can back and finish your sovereignty, or you can back and finish your hard ward amulet, or aura items like this. Then it's going to be more valuable for a team to have these aura items than having 1 extra D ward. Moving over, the mid laner usually wants to ward all of the mid camps with normal wards and Sentry Wards. Although the mid laner also occasionally has to make sure to place Sentry Wards on the objective, which are Gold Fury and Fire Giant. On mid laners you don't want to set your build really far back as on the hunter role, but you do want to make sure that you're comfortable that you're not gonna get ganked. Therefore I recommend at least picking up 2 normal wards or 1 Sentry Ward per back. You're simply so vulnerable to ganks in the mid lane that you do want to get at least these wards. If you don't get these wards and you die, you have to think, alright, in this time I'm dead right now, I could have definitely farmed the gold that 1 ward for 50 gold is gonna cost me. So always remember to get wards. Now the jungler in specific has a lot of places to ward. I do recommend spending your Sentry Wards around the mid camps though, or around the lane you want to camp. Let's say the solo laner, enemy solo laner is really far ahead or really far behind, and you just want to get a free kill or help your solo laner out. You probably want to make sure that you have Sentry Warded, at least like let's say the blue buff, so you make sure that he does not see you coming. Besides doing these smart D-wards around the solo lane or the dual lane, you also have to make sure that if you want to invade that speed buff, you're going to be the one that has to drop the normal ward on the speed buff. In general, the jungler is actually the player on your team that's going to benefit the most from wards, so it also makes sense to get a lot of wards on the jungler. However, again, you don't want to set yourself too far back, but I do recommend at least getting 1 Sentry Ward per back. Getting normal wards is also really going to help you out. Let's say you have a normal ward on the enemy red buff and you're going to see the jungler there. You know you have a timing to go and invade buffs on the other side of the map, or go and gank somewhere on the other side of the map without getting counter ganked. Now the solo laner doesn't really have to ward too much, although I do recommend at least getting 1 ward per back in solo lane. You want to focus your wards around the enemy blue buff and your own blue buff. Now all these wards I just mentioned are mainly placed in the early and mid game ending around 20-25 minutes. After this period, everyone needs to be getting Sentry Wards when they're back, unless they're gonna hit a big power spike, like you getting Rod of the Hood, or you getting Deathbringer, or you just finishing your Bulwark of Hope or something like that. The reasoning why Sentry Wards becomes more and more valuable as the game goes on is that you and the enemy team has way bigger chances of sneaking objectives such as Fire Giant, Gold Fury and Portal Demon. This is mainly because your ADC is gonna be rotating with you now, and the Hunters do have a tendency to deal a lot of damage to objectives. So remember, if possible, 1 D-ward per back. When I say D-ward, I mean Sentry Ward as well, I have to mention that. 1 Sentry Ward per back in the late game. Now talking about late game, let's move on to some warding positions you can do when you're getting pushed or pushing the enemy towers or phoenixes. Now we're gonna put up 2 scenarios for you in this video. If you want more, you should definitely just ask in the comment section below what you're gonna do, and I will try and answer your questions. Now the first of the 2 scenarios we're gonna put up for you is that the enemy team or yourself are gonna be pushing down the tier 2 towers anywhere on the map. During these kind of pushes where the enemy team or your team usually has Fire Giant, it's actually really important to have good wards around on the map. To talk about some of the wards you can place, it's almost always a really good idea to have a normal ward placed in front of the tower. This makes it so your mid laner and your ADC is gonna have a lot more vision, also spotting out guards standing in blind angles. Besides that, having your jungle warded up while you're getting pushed or pushing is really important as well. This makes sure so you see that, let's say the Torf is gonna be sniping you from over the back camp, you're gonna be seeing that, or that the enemy jungler is gonna flank from behind. You can all spot this out with really good wards. So starting on the care side, if you want to push the left tower on care side, you want to make sure that you have D-wards in these 3 spots, as well as these are the spots you want to have D-warded if you're defending. This is made so you can spot out the enemies trying to do damage over the wall or the jungler flanking. Moving over to the tier 2 tower, you want to have the ward in front of the tower as well as these 4 wards placed. If you go to the right tower, the right tier 2 tower on care side, you want to make sure you have these 3 D wards placed, and you can also sometimes have a normal ward at the speed buff, which is going to help you out quite a bit as well. Now moving on to defending / attacking on other side tier 2s, you want to have these D wards for the bottom left tier 2 tower, as well as a ward in front, and sometimes you want to have a normal ward on the red buff as well when defending. For the tier 2 mid tower on the other side, it's pretty much the same wards as it is on the care side, so it makes a lot of sense, right? For the tier 2 right on the other side, you want to have the same 3 wards, and you can also have a normal ward on the speed buff. Also remember to have the ward in front of your lane. Let's say you are the one that's pushing. Placing a sentry ward in front of the tower is never a bad idea, because if you can eliminate the enemy, the defending team's normal ward that's going to be spotting you out throughout the whole fight, that's going to be a really big win for you. Now the other scenario we're going to set up for you guys is the Phoenix defenses of all 6 Phoenixes. As you guys can see, it makes a lot of sense. You have the normal wards in front of all the Phoenixes on both sides of the map, and there's also the D wards in between the 2 Phoenixes, which is like the left and mid Phoenix and the mid and right Phoenix. These 2 wards are there to make sure that the enemy team, the attacking team, is not gonna be able to put up any wards in between there, as usually you want to have someone hiding in there that is gonna surprise the enemy when they walk into the Phoenix. Now the 2 left wards are the 2 wards in between the lanes, and these wards are really important, as you can see someone flanking or someone going to split push another Phoenix. Now this was quite a bit about some of the situational wards. Now we are going to go to another thing, which is we are going to call the untraditional wards. The untraditional wards are the wards that you don't see every day. An example for that could be the ward you place against Mercury. Here we have 2 examples of me placing wards behind the tier 1 tower, the enemy tier 1 tower, to make sure that that's Rexha, my ADC, is gonna stay safe. There are some certain other guards, especially a few patches ago, where some wards would be really good. These are, we're gonna call them backdoor potential wards, so you would place wards in front of a tower in the jungle to try and avoid backdoors from someone like Bastet, seen in SPL as well, or something like Skadi, Nua, anyone that can really backdoor a Phoenix. Those are not as common anymore, even for untraditional wards, since people don't really split push without waves. To put up a scenario, if your team is pushing a Phoenix and the enemy team is losing, but they do have one lane where there's a Phoenix that's dead, you need to make sure that the enemy team can't go and backdoor your Titan. Therefore you want to place wards kind of where you would place them if they were pushing your Phoenix or they're pushing your tier 2 tower. This way you're gonna spot them out in time so you can all back and deicide them and then hopefully go into the game. Besides all these wards that you can use against certain guards, there is also some untraditional ward placements. The first one I want to mention is the wards that you can place in the mid lane. These wards are usually placed in front of the enemy's mid tier 1 tower. This is just made so you can see where the enemy jungle, mid laner and or support is. Another ward you see placed is the ward right in front of the 4 back camps on the map. This is made so you can see where the jungler is rotating in and out. It's not exactly on the speed or red buffs, but it's kind of towards the middle lane. As you can see, you're gonna spot out which side the jungler is, and this way you can figure out if you can go for an objective or if you can make plays on one side of the map. The last wards I want to mention as untraditional wards right now are going to be the wards behind the Gold Fury and Fire Giant on the solo and duo lane sides. The ADCs are going to place a ward behind the Gold Fury to make sure to spot out any rotation that can come in and take their lives. Same goes for the solo laner behind Fire Giant. In high competitive levels, these wards are placed quite often and sometimes even dewarded, although it's not seen a lot in ranked and in casual conquests. Sometimes wards are used to face check as well. Let's say the enemy team is doing Gold Fury and you want to see how low it is, but you don't want to expose yourself. You can place a ward to try and get the health on it. These wards are most commonly just destroyed instantly, but they do give you a slight advantage because you're gonna see the enemy's position for a few seconds. These can also be used during team fights or during plays around Fire Giant, Phoenixes, towers or whatever. The last thing under the untraditional wards we're gonna talk about is something we're gonna call smart warding and smart sentry warding. The main purpose of these wards is to avoid enemy wards, or for the smart sentry wards to catch enemy normal wards that are trying to avoid your sentry ward. To give an example of some smart wards, you have the 2 normal wards you can place around the Gold Fury, not on the Gold Fury, but like right behind the enemy red buff on the carry side and in the intersection on the other side. This is gonna make sure you avoid the normal sentry wards that's on gold, and these wards serve the same purpose, that is making sure the enemy team cannot go ahead and take the Gold Fury. You will know about this because you will still have vision. Now the counterplay to this is to place your sentry wards a bit more like outside towards these wards. Instead of placing this directly in front of the sentry ward, you want to place it like just on the outer bit of the circle. This way you can both catch the normal ward, and if the enemy team has a sentry ward on the Gold Fury, you're going to catch that ward as well, and then you're going to take out 2 wards with 1 ward, which is really good. The same goes for the other side of the map. As you guys can see, we have the 4 wards right here around the Fire Giant. These are made to avoid the sentry ward on Fire Giant and on the mid camps, but at the same time it's gonna serve the same purpose as in Gold Fury, where you're gonna avoid the normal sentry wards. And now at the end here we have these 4 wards, the sentry wards that are gonna catch out these smart normal wards, so you can place those as well to get the wards on the mid camps and or the Fire Giant and get the smart wards like the normal wards you see. So as you can see, there is a counterplay to a lot of the warding, and there is counterplay to sentry wards as well. But if you really use your mind when placing down wards, you can gain so much from it, besides someone that would just not really think about it and just plunk it down in the usual spots. To finish this video off, I have some golden rules, and the golden rules that I use are these 2 golden rules. You have to remember both of these rules. The first rule is always buy wards before items. When you go back to base, you do not want to buy your items first. You want to always make sure you go ahead and grab the sentry ward or you grab a normal ward, and then you can buy your items. This way you're gonna get a lot better of always buying wards, even though if that's gonna set you a bit behind in your build, it's almost always better for your team. The other role that I have that kinda applies the most to supports is that you always want to add 170 gold to the item you want to buy when backing. A good example is that I want to finish my Sovereignty. Sovereignty costs 700 gold for the final upgrade, and therefore I want to back when I have 870 gold, so I can buy my Sentry Ward and my normal ward. This doesn't mean you have to start backing, channeling the back when you have exactly 870 gold. Of course you can back if you have 840 gold, 850 gold, something like that, then you can just wait in base. So those are my 2 golden rules. First one applies to all roles, but the second one pretty much just applies to the support role. And just to give you guys kind of a heads up, please remember to buy wards. Wards wins you games, wards makes it so you don't die, you die less, you spot out the enemy team during objectives, you spot out the enemy, it's just so helpful. Also remember that wards are always way better than potions for at least after the first 5 minutes. You don't want to get potions when you're back, you just want to buy wards only. So that was it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to check out more about wards, I made a video about why I think the ward chalice is bad. I also have some series about me going back and watching my SPL games I played and talking about why I did certain things and what I did wrong. The series is called In Hindsight.
And I can highly recommend checking those out. So click on that channel right up there. Do it. Just click it.
So for now,
thank you guys for watching. I hope this was interesting. I hope this was insightful. I personally learned a lot. I enjoyed doing this with EmilZy, and we might do more in the future. Let me know in the comments if you feel like that's something you'd be into, see more of us, together. Hope to see you all for the next one tomorrow. ZiSotto out.